Great. So Judy and I are going to talk a little bit about meltdowns. I think all of the thoughts that you guys shared within Kate's case were really like things that you thought about that like really could cause a meltdown or be, definitely contributing to them. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Next slide, please. Okay, so meltdowns are really telling us something, why the behavior is occurring is very important for us to kind of figure out, be a detective about, what's the child trying to tell us? Things when you see a meltdown that you should be paying attention to is like the intensity of the behavior, how frequently a behavior is occurring, where does it occur, or like where does it not occur? So like in Kate's case, there seem to be a lot of meltdowns occurring like first thing in the morning. Medical factors in general, like does the child feel okay, especially kids that have difficulty expressing themselves. They might not be able to tell us or show us on their body if something is hurting or they're in pain, or they just feel not right. And then again, like what skills does a child have? So things like communication, play, self-regulation, what skills does that child have, or what skills does that child need to develop in order to replace some of those negative behaviors that we might be seeing. Um, and, when you think about autism, some of the challenges within autism are communication and self-regulation. So that can kind of exacerbate some of the reasons that a child might be having a meltdown. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about just a tantrum versus a meltdown. We are going to talk about meltdowns today. Tantrums are typically very purposeful, they're controlled, they're communicative. Most of the times I will say kids aware or at least subconsciously aware of the situation and their reactions. They're trying to use a behavior to really purposely let you know something. And meltdowns are typically like very uncontrollable. They're filled with emotion. They can appear like irrational, like not really sure why they're happening in the setting that they are or what behavior we're seeing. This can happen really when a child's overstimulated or just like has maybe feelings of being overwhelmed. I would say it's often really related to sensory processing or other sensory factors. You know your kid best, so listen to your gut. OTs and behavior specialists can really help understand the purpose of certain behaviors and also how to address them. And how you kind of initially respond to your child really will depend on whether you feel the child is having a tantrum or a meltdown. Next slide, please. So again, we'll be talking about meltdowns today. Next slide. Okay, so some things, and I think we talked a little bit about that in Kate's case, that can affect meltdowns or kind of cause them to occur. So any kind of illness or physical discomfort, it could be something like gas or constipation, it could be pain, it could just be a bug bite. Is a child hungry? Are they thirsty? Maybe they are too full. Are they having difficulty communicating? And that can be very frustrating. Maybe they're not getting enough sleep. Maybe sensory stimuli in general. Maybe there's too much sensory input around them. Maybe there's not enough. Maybe that child needs a little bit more to be engaged. Previous experiences, if I'm at a place and something kind of negative happened to me there, or maybe I fell and, hurt my head, then I might have more of a meltdown when I'm in that particular place. Could it be a learned behavior? Could it be something that you just kind of have been reinforced in doing in the past? It could be boredom, could be, a child trying to seek connection or just like trouble with initiation in general. Next slide. So a couple things to think about is your child overstimulated or understimulated? And then you want to think about what can be done to decrease or increase that sensory stimuli around them. What can be done to support their sensory needs? I will be honest, that can change definitely from day to day. So it's often very helpful to have like a couple of tools in your toolbox for these kind of situations. Does a task need to be done? So if you're seeing a meltdown when it's like, for example, in Kate's case, in the morning, like trying to get ready for school, does it need to be done a certain way? Can you change it, or can you help them, or can you make the expectation a little bit less to make it a little bit easier? I always say, like, if child doesn't want to wear socks, it's fine. You don't have to wear socks when it's not that cold out. Maybe it's not raining or snowing, but that the rule is, you have to wear socks when it is snowing or raining. Next slide. And then if it's happening around like a task, it can be something like a play task or just like an activity of daily living. Does your child have the skills needed to complete that task? So are meal times hard because the child wants to feed themselves but doesn't have the fine motor control to do so? Um, is your child trying to communicate something with you? They could be expressing pain or wanting attention or wanting help. You could build a fort. You could offer them a safe space to go while they are having that meltdown to kind of be sure that they're not going to hurt themselves and give them a space to hopefully help themselves calm. You might see things like rocking or spinning or covering ears. That could be due to social challenges. There's too much social pressure. They might feel scared or they might feel a little trapped, especially if there's like lots of people around them or there's lots of people talking at them or asking them for things that could occur in like a classroom setting. Is there like an internal distress? Is something inside their body not feeling right, is alarming to them, so they're acting out in that sense. Maybe there's a change in routine, and that's extremely distressing for them. Some things that you can try would be distraction. You could offer something new. Sometimes, like just something new or unexpected can be surprisingly calming or distracting. Offer something familiar, another, again, like a repetitive activity, and just always making sure your child's basic needs are met. So you're going to likely see an increase of meltdown type behaviors if your child's not sleeping very well, maybe isn't eating really well, maybe has been sick, things like that. You might see your child like pacing or trying to run away. They might hide. That could also be due to overwhelming emotions or confusing emotions. So they're feeling all these things. They don't know what they are. It just feels too big, too much. Or there could be too much demand that we might be placing on them or that they're perceiving as it's too much. Some things to try would be like limit touching or handling. You move very slowly. Sometimes I'll say I'm going to narrate what I'm going to do. Make sure you're validating their feelings. You be predictable, so don't do something that seems unpredictable. Use really concise, clear, simple language. Pictures or timers can really help in these kind of situations. Um, you could see things like changes in breathing or changes in skin coloring that really could be caused by stress or overall anxiety. Working with teaching children how to use different breathing exercises, offering comfort items, offering like a sensory break or, guiding them towards a sensory activity that most of the time really helps them calm their nervous system. This might be a good idea at this point. And so if anybody wants to jump in now with things that you might have seen or reasons that you might feel, you know, that behavior was caused or something that you have found that has been helpful. Um, yeah. Yeah. So keeping a calm body for yourself and you maintaining calm can be really difficult, but it is very helpful. Um, and a quiet space, definitely. And then having something to help the child communicate if they're having a hard time. Definitely. That's a great ideas. Okay. Next slide. Okay. And then some things we can do to help prevent meltdowns. Just ensure basic needs are met. You be prepared, prepare your child. So prepare them for sometimes like what could be unexpected. Help keep sensory systems regulated. Use positive behavior supports, which we're going to talk about a little later. Maintain routines as much as possible. Real life, it's kind of feels impossible sometimes, but that can help. Consistency, but also be flexible. So I think one thing that we can do is we keep our kind of mood, our presence, how we might respond to our child consistent. And that can kind of provide some consistency to a situation that might feel, I don't want to say not so consistent. Have alternative strategies available. I always call it like have a bag of tricks. Inevitably, if you come out with just like one thing that you think is going to help, your child's not going to want that. So try to have a couple strategies that you can use. Make sure that the demand or the request that you're asking for your kid matches their skill, and check in with yourself. It's often necessary and important. Do you need to take do some breathing exercises for yourself or do a little countdown. Are you starting to feel a little like overstimulated? I know that's definitely something that can easily happen in like meltdown situations. Next slide. Okay. Judy's going to
Okay.
talk a little bit about positive behavior supports.
Yeah. Okay. So trying to focus, we're going to go quickly through some things that can help prevent meltdowns by trying to help a child prepare for what's coming or understand what's coming. But I do want to save some time at the end for talking about what do you do if a meltdown has started? How do you handle that? So, all right. So we've talked a lot about some good strategies to try to figure out, um, to try to prevent. So let's skip this slide and we'll go to the next one. All right, next slide. So one way to help prevent meltdowns is for the child to really understand what's happening, and visual schedules can be a really helpful way to do that. So there's some examples, and if you have some examples you want to chat about in the chat, that'd be great. But visual schedule can be for the whole day, or it could be for the morning or the evening or a particular routine. So a visual schedule could be something that we use in Kate's case. Like if the morning has been really difficult, maybe a visual schedule would help that young man like get through the morning routine and have something to focus on rather than feeling overwhelmed and kind of lost and confused in the wake up, get everybody ready, and everybody's running around the house. It might help him focus on something. Next slide. Containers are also a really good way to help explain what's happening. So here's a few examples. So sometimes in the bathroom, what people will do is on the left-hand side of the sink, it's hard to see, but it says to do. And on the right hand, there's a little black basket that says done. And so everything that needs to be done in the morning starts out in that left-hand basket. And as you take the things out and do them, you put them in the right-hand basket. And once that left-hand basket is done, and empty, then you know you're done and you can leave the bathroom. It's a nice way to use the objects and a structure to help it be clear what's the task here. Another way to use containers are in the middle. There's an example of this is for a child who wants to snack but is often rummaging through the kitchen or eating things that are not really food. So we made a container with her name on it and taught her that anything in this container is fair game. You can eat anything you want in this box anytime you want, and nobody will be upset and nobody will give you grief and nobody will say no. And that was a way to help her understand where good snacks can come from, where available snacks can come from. And then the third one is another basket container idea. So the whole outfit is in this basket. Pants, socks, underwear, shoes, earrings, if you're going to wear earrings, the whole thing is in there. And once you just go to that basket, you pull the thing out, you put it on, and when the basket's empty, you're ready for the day. All right, next slide. Here's a couple more visual examples. So sometimes in parts of the house, you don't want somebody going into certain drawers. So you can put a no sign on places that they're not allowed to go to, and then a yes sign on places that they are. You can use visual schedules to say like what you're working for and how much longer until the work time is done. And you can also use visual timers to say like, how long are we going to do this? When do I need to stop? When do I need to stop doing what I'm doing? When is the next activity happening? And those visual timers are often really helpful. Next slide. There's also a way to use visual supports to help people move from one place to another. So we do this a lot in classrooms and out in a bunch of different examples. But so for example, if you have a child who has a hard time getting from the bus into the classroom, you can give them an object that they focus on that gets them. So the bus driver might give the child a sticker, and then the kid is going to put the sticker on the calendar in the classroom. So instead of worrying about where am I going, how am I getting there, I'm a little confused about what's happening. They see the sticker and they go, oh, I know where that calendar is. And they walk to the classroom where the calendar is, put the sticker on the calendar, and voila, they're in the classroom and they're ready to go. And they had something to do during that transition. We sometimes will do that from taking a picture from your schedule, to the place in the classroom you need to go. So instead of having to listen to the teacher and focus on what the teacher is saying, you can use the object to tell you where to go. And for many kids with autism, that just makes it really tangible and concrete. What am I doing and where am I going? And they're focusing on that activity instead of feeling lost and confused from what's going on. Okay, next slide. Social stories are also a really good way to prepare kids for new events. And so if you don't know what a social story is, we can maybe have a separate discussion about that. But social stories are great, and getting comfortable writing them is a really good skill. It's important to remember that a social story is not supposed to teach a child what punishment they will get if they misbehave. It's not for that. It's for introducing a situation, describing the situation, and describing the things that you can do in that situation and what you might expect. Just don't write in there, if I don't follow directions, I'm going to lose my iPad. That's not what a social story is for. Next slide. Okay, sometimes it's also helpful to just look at the child's week. We did this with several folks in school where they were having meltdowns during the day. So we mapped out the school day for them. The case we had today was having more meltdowns at home. So if I were working with this family, I might make a schedule for the week and figure out when during the week is this child having a hard time? When are they having meltdowns? Next slide, you'll see, or press, yeah, there you go. So then you can highlight, when is this kid having a rough time? And that might give you some clues about what's happening. Because, look, for example, you can see in this case, Sunday afternoon starts to become rough toward the end of church and then after church. That's probably a hunger and a fatigue kind of thing. On Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, those afternoon school periods and after dinner is always rough. There's probably a regulation thing. There hasn't been enough like rest time or a good snack or getting outside and getting some physical movement. There's been a lot of focused energy. Now I need some physical activity. But if you map it out like this, you can kind of start generating some ideas about what might be causing this meltdown. Okay, next. And then let's talk about how to handle meltdowns when they happen. So in an ideal world, you've done everything you can to prevent a meltdown. You also want to really learn the earliest signs, because sometimes if you can see that first sign, you might be able to redirect and help the child change course, right? So there were some examples in the chat about what those first signs might be. And sometimes it's as simple as um, a grunt, or like or a pace, or it's a sign that might seem kind of subtle, but when you've been with this person for a lot, and if you think back, like, okay, yesterday he had a big meltdown. What was happening before? What was the first sign that that I could tell maybe he was struggling? Was there any sign before that? And so you get to where there's a sign that's really not a problem right now, but it's the first indication that a meltdown might be starting. If you can find that first sign and intervene, then you might really change course. But let's say you've missed it, the meltdown has started. If it's truly a meltdown, then it's not really something the child has control over. Tantrums you have more control over because you're kind of doing that on purpose. But if you're in meltdown mode, you're really overwhelmed and your body you are overrun by your body at this moment. So when that's happening, what you want to do as a caregiver is you got to recognize this thing is probably going to have to run its course, and you want to focus on, how do I keep my child and people around safe, and can I preserve my child's dignity in this situation? A lot of kids recognize after a meltdown that it was super embarrassing, and they are really mortified that it happened, and they're really bothered by the fact that they had a meltdown. So if there's a way to clear the room gently, just invite other people to leave and go do something else, you stay calm, um, you know trying not to escalate the meltdown into something more than it already is, and really try to give your loved one some safety and some privacy, and then the meltdown will run its course, and then you can come back to participate. but try not to engage in, like, that's not the time to engage in threats of punishment or threats of discipline. It's really time to just back off. We're just going to let this go because we can tell this is a meltdown. This is not a behavior that we're trying to intervene in. This is my child is really having a rough time and I need to just give him some space. That's a hard distinction. And that's where your growth as a caregiver will come all the time, because you'll get it wrong sometimes, and then sometimes you'll get it right. But that's a distinction that you want to get better and better each time if you can. Okay. Any questions?
I do want to just list out. I was just taking notes of all of the great ideas that were in the chat for ways to kind of help if a child's having a meltdown, to help them regulate. So some things that were suggested were breathing techniques, using headphones or fidget toys, trying to keep yourself regulated, and that it's also okay to give yourself a timeout if you feel like you're getting a little too overworked. Um, and co-regulation, so that's something that you can work on with your child. Being extra kind to yourself, especially, being kind to other people if you see them experiencing a meltdown, their child's having a meltdown, and teaching some different calming strategies, you know, teaching new skills. And, it's very important to teach those things in a moment of calm. So you're really not going to teach a new skill or teach a way to calm your body when you're in the throes of a meltdown.